Hello, everyone. Pat down at MMA back with our last DWCS breakdown of the season. It's been a great journey and an awesome ride, and I really appreciate your guys' support. I just recorded this episode with my mic not on, so if you guys could please like, comment, and subscribe for one, the last episode, and two, me having to re-record this entire thing, that would be greatly appreciated. But we're going to be getting into an amazing flyweight co-main event between Nick Piccininni and Luis Gurule, two undefeated fighters. Going to be getting into someone we should be familiar with in Nick Piccininni first. I'm not going to spend too much time on him because we saw him on week 3 against Jack Duffy. He is a DWCS alumni from this season. Piccininni has a 7-0 record with 5 submission wins. He fought in Fury FC and is a former wrestler at Oklahoma State. Piccininni likes to stalk forward, has some very solid footwork and very quick movement, and a very stiff jab that just kind of keeps opponents at bay. He has some very quick hooks in the pocket as well, but kind of can be clipped once he gets into striking range, and has been caught and dropped before when he throws the jab a bit lazy. He does recover well, but is susceptible to being kickboxed on the outside and just outstruck at range because of his size. And Piccinini doesn't have the best head movement overall. He kind of had his leg chopped up by Jack Duffy in that fight, but the grappling is where Piccinini really shines. Most of his striking really just sets up his grappling, his right hand, his jab, his combos, all just really set up his takedowns. Piccinini is very strong in the clinch. He has some really solid knees and just likes to kind of manhandle people in there. He's always looking for the early takedown and uses those strikes to set them up, and then has some big takedowns once he is able to get them. He's really good at just all kinds of takedowns and gets them really easily most of the time. Once he gets on top, Piccinini is pretty smothering. He has some pretty active ground and pound and some pretty nice short elbows and just constant punches. He also works to the back very fluently and has some incredible control there. He lets opponents give up their own back. He lets them make that mistake and then will just punish them with chokes and just choke them out. He has some really tight arm triangles as well. His rear naked choke and arm triangles are some really solid submissions he has in his arsenal, and I'm pretty sure he has more as well. Just don't really get to see them much because he's just able to really use those two to a very strong degree. Piccinini's grappling defense is also really good. He has some good takedown defense. He escapes submissions well. He can get off his back pretty easily too. He's very creative with his get-ups and just with his grappling in general. He is so creative and just very fun to watch in there. And if he is getting stuffed, he does continue to shoot. He won't get deterred if some of his takedowns are being denied. I will say overall though, in that Duffy fight, we did see a bit of cardio concerns come into play in that third round. Just because of the pace of that fight, it was a very high pace fight, which is something that we could obviously see in this fight with a guy like Luis Gurule, who is such a pressure fighter. So we're going to be getting into Luis Gurule now. Gurule is from Colorado. He's 5'5" and 30 years old. He came into this fight on just a week notice, so very, very short notice for him. He is 9-0 with 5 knockout wins and 1 submission win, and he fought just 3 weeks ago. He won the Fury FC Flyweight Championship and spent most of his career out in Fury. This will also be his 10th fight in the last 28 months. So just a ridiculously impressive activity rate from Luis Gurule. And his activity in terms of fights also translates to how he fights inside the cage because he just has a crazy pressure and pace. He loves to break guys down with his volume and power. He always comes out hard, just kind of storming forward with his hands low. Really has little regard for defense. He trusts his chin and just generates a lot of power once he gets into that boxing range with these short punches. He has some big left hooks that he'll spam in the pocket and a really big left uppercut that he'll just wing out of nowhere. He also has a really nice right hand. He throws the hooks with it well. He has this really nice straight right, and he does throw a lot of overhand rights that he'll throw a back fist off of them after the miss, and he actually has knocked someone out with that back fist before. So that's its own little weapon in its own right. Gurule also has some really quick combinations and some really nice body shots. He also has some really clean step in elbows and really solid knees, and he uses both of those weapons in the clinch really nicely as well. Gurule also has some tapping leg kicks, not too much power, but really just tap, tap. And he really has some clean lead high kicks and some really nice teeps to the body that he doesn't throw to keep his opponent off. He throws them for damage. He really sticks those toes in there when he throws that teep to the body. Gurule does get caught a lot coming forward though and has been dropped and rocked bad before. He does have good recovery and usually does find the clinch in those at those times, there has been a couple moments where he has been rocked and hurt because he really just doesn't have a massive regard for defense. And Gurule usually throws with a lot of power and does overthrow on some of his punches, but recently he has been a bit more technical and hasn't been doing that as much, which has also hurt his power because he hasn't knocked anyone out in his past four fights. He went from 5 knockouts in his first 5 pro fights to in his past 4 fights, just one finish and it being a submission. And Gurule does struggle with guys that are going to constantly move. He does want to really trap guys against the cage to let his hands go. And if he can't do that, he does become a bit less effective. And it just, if his power doesn't come through, he just doesn't have as much of a threat to his overall striking game. But he is still dangerous. He does still have good volume and can break you down. In the clinch, Gurule is pretty strong. He does throw a lot of punches and have some really good tosses, but his top control isn't great. He really just cares about getting damage off more than actually controlling on top. And he has some vicious ground and pound elbows that he loves to just pound into opponents' heads on the ground. In his last fight against Jacob Silva, he also showed that he has good submissions. He has a really tight arm triangle that he took Jacob Silva down out of nowhere in the fourth round and just locked up the arm triangle immediately. It was basically instant. He does have some good get-ups and some good submission defense, but his takedown defense overall isn't the greatest. He has been taken down by wrestlers worse than Piccinini. He does have some pretty good cardio overall, though. He does throw good volume throughout a fight and will keep good volume and pressure and pace on opponents while going into those third, fourth rounds. So that's very impressive out of Gurule. I will say though, we haven't seen that power from him in his last 4 fights the same way we did in his first 5. So I am interested to see if that's something that's worn down against better competition, or it's because of the style change where he's gotten more technical and doesn't like to overthrow on his punches as much. So for my prediction for this fight, it's a pretty great clash of stylistic opposites. You have Gurule, who's the better striker, volume striker, Piccinini, who's kind of like the volume grappler, dominant grappler, and it's a very fun fight. I think it's very possible that Piccinini could get Gurule to the ground early and control him there and potentially get a submission. And I also think it's possible that if he doesn't get that submission and Gurule is able to keep the fight on the feet for a little bit and start to land some volume, that he's able to break Piccinini late in round 3. So it really is a toss-up because both of these guys also could win by decision depending on the flow of the fight and just the pace. But I think I do favor Nick Piccinini to get the submission win on Luis Gurule. I feel like Gurule hasn't really fought a wrestler like Piccinini, and the fact that he is getting taken down by guys who I don't rate as highly wrestling wise does kind of show me that Piccinini will be able to get him down, and I think he might be able to control him as well. If he isn't, though, Luis Gurule probably should be able to break Piccinini down and either get the win by decision or maybe a late finish. But for my official prediction, I will be going with Piccinini round 2 submission. I do think Piccinini's grappling will just be a bit too much, and I do think he will have learned from his fight with Jack Duffy and be able to not make some of the mistakes he made in that fight and be able to win this one. Gurule being on short notice also does play a factor in this fight, but give me Nick Piccinini to take the W. Thank you all for tuning in to my DWCS breakdowns this season. I will have more coming soon for other things. I won't want to spoil it too much, but I will have my breakdowns continued. I thank everyone so much for the continued support, and please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you all enjoyed it. I will catch you in the next one.